The thing is, if we do get stuck and we do need somebody, I think what we ought to do is put out bids like we're doing for everything else here, okay? We've done it for master plan committee, we've done it for all these other committees. We put out bids for people if they're gonna do any services for the town, okay? And especially when it's gonna cost the town money, okay? We like to know in advance what it's gonna cost, okay? So I would make a motion that we terminate Mr. Richardson's employment here as far as being the labor negotiator. Turn it back over to Mr. McGowan for the insurance purposes, and if we do need somebody, we do look out, look elsewhere for other
I
fees.
thought we had agreed that we were not going to come up with last minute things, that we were going to, I would like to table this to the workshop.
Well,
It's not on top of us, it's something that has to be done. It's another thing, we can withhold the payment. It's another thing that we can have some time to think about rather than making a staff decision about. We're going into trying to negotiate some changes as we all talked about it in our last meeting. I'm not sure I'm ready to jump in. I mean, if we want to use somebody else, that's a different story, but I think we need to think about it, look at your proposal again, and spend some time with it, and I'd like to bring it up at the workshop, and then see where we go.
I don't know of any
It's not-
town that
it's
doesn't
not-
have a labor negotiator.
It's not a snap decision.
Very,
number
very
one.
important.
But it may not be on your part.
Number two, this caught me totally by surprise,
Right, but
okay? And the board was never told about this man that I'm aware of.
He's
And
been
if-
the you know him, he's been the labor negotiator for many
Have we
years.
hired him?
He's
we
never
find-
been hired by the
have-
town board in any year. He has simply been presented as a labor negotiator, and he's the person who knows the highway department, knows our contracts. He's the labor negotiator for many, many towns. It never came up as an issue.
we can
The
certainly look
reason
at
it
other
never came up as an issue is because I just saw this bill that when I was sitting at the desk Tuesday, when I was going through all these bills, I saw this and I set me right back. And I'm saying, who authorized this man to spend 2.5 hours or 2 hours here? I mean, the town board was never aware of it. And when the town board has to spend money, don't we all have to agree on it? Don't we all have to agree on bringing somebody in if we're going to spend money?
Bill, excuse me, what do you see as the function of the labor
Well,
negotiator?
first off, Mr. Richardson was retained by the town board. He has been the labor negotiator. I'd have to go back to see the date and the time and the minutes that would show that, but he was retained as the consultant for the town for the purposes of the collective bargaining by the town. The issue that you have is if he has submitted an invoice, your only choice on that is to either approve the invoice by the requisite number of members of the town board or to deny the invoice, and then that brings up what his recourse would be after that.
We did approve
Well,
it.
what I'm trying to say, Bill, is that, okay, we're gonna have to pay this bill, we're gonna have to pay Monday night's bill, okay? No question, the money's there, it's in the line item. What I wanna know is, if the town board hired Mr. Richardson, okay, that was how many years ago, number one, and number two, isn't the town board obligated to work for the betterment of the town, to save the town money, to get the best we can for the least amount of money, okay? And not that Mr. Richardson isn't capable, but I'm of the opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we should put out bids or put out requests for other people to come in. We could probably get the same expertise for probably a cheaper amount. And like I just explained, I've done it with that contract, and I've been doing it for quite a few years. I spent hours right after work doing negotiations, okay? And I know it's in that contract. And if somebody needs to know or wanted to know, I'd be more than happy to go over everything in that contract, okay? And if we can agree on coming to some kind of thing where we can put out something to get a different proposal, I feel pretty good about it. I know we can say that-
I just trying to understand Bill, you're saying Michael Richardson was retained for collective bargaining.
He was retained for a number of items. First thing that he was retained for, as I recall, again, on my recollection,
Okay.
was to prepare and write the jobs descriptions as part of the package that we had to do with civil service.
Okay.
We did not have a labor consultant until the union was voted in by the highway department. Once the union was voted in, we are then required to collectively bargain for that.
Correct.
The town board designated a representative at that time from the town board. It started with, I believe, Tim Marriott, and it has then devolved on the other members.
Now, how long ago was this? Approximate time frame?
3 years ago, 4 years
3 years
ago?
ago, 4 years ago?
More than that.
6.
Well,
6 years
see,
ago.
what had happened is when they started doing the negotiations, it was just Tim Marriott and Dave Keeter, and it was myself and Gary Hickey from the union, okay? We got probably 3/4 of the way through all the negotiations. We were doing really good. And then Dave felt uncomfortable, so then he hired Mr. Richardson.
It wasn't just Dave, it was the town board.
The town board hired him.
All right, so maybe 6 years ago, he was hired to, or retained for collective bargaining. I guess he met in February with Virginia. And what was that for?
As the chief fiscal officer and as somebody who would be responsible for what happens in the collective bargaining, as one of the people responsible, he came to bring me up to speed on information.
Okay,
It's my understanding further that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that this is the year that the contract is up.
And the contract is up.
all right.
And it was a pre-negotiation informational meeting.
Okay, at some point, can you just share that information with the town board, whatever you met in February about?
If I could, on any issues of collective bargaining, I mean, we're talking about the invoice, which is a different issue than what we're talking about is the substance of potentially
Well, there's a
strategy
number of things.
for that item. So those items should be discussed in executive session.
The
as
collective
The
bargaining.
collective bargaining
Correct.
items or
Okay.
updates or strategies and such.
Yes.
The invoice is not a not a.
No, I think what Tom's point, and Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, I think his concern is we had an individual who came in at $150 an hour in February to discuss certain collective bargaining issues with the town supervisor. And I do agree with Tom, we should be made privy to that information. All right, that's the first thing. The second thing is, as I'm understanding Tom, he came in Monday, right? And was, and I'm going to kind of go off on a few things here. But he came in Monday with the health insurance consultant, basically to sell us a product, basically to sell us a product. I mean, that's what he was doing. A second health insurance option, all right? Is he going to bill us for that time that he's coming in to sell us a product? All right, that I'm not quite sure I agree
Well,
with.
he's not selling a product.
Well, the insurance agent is, and
The insurance agent.
basically, Mr. Richardson, and I'm not going to disclose executive session issues, but basically, Mr. Richardson said everybody's doing it, in a nutshell. I mean, he really